Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue talking about my current project of coding the combat system for a viewer's game. So, as you can see, we're in the companion inventory screen where I have made some changes to the layout. For example, this horizontal line if we have two companions. And also, probably most importantly, it now displays what the companions are currently holding, as well as what's in their backpacks. I would like to change the layout so that this, if there was fewer items in a given inventory, they don't get spread out in this way. I would like them to always be compact like the one at the top, but I have to actually get some advice on how to do that. So I'm not going to deal with that in this video, obviously. And I'm not going to go through sort of how I did what I've done here, because it's really just laying out HTML tables. It took quite a while to get it right, but there's not much that I would teach you by telling you the details of how I did it. So I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that that's now there if you're interested in following along with the progress of the game. What I actually want to talk about today is to do with the companions, but it's more mechanical. It's to do with the fact that currently, or at least as of the previous video, you could order the companions to put something in their offhand. So, for example, I could, if I were to click that hand, that would be to order them to put that knife in their hand, or they could put the machete, the broom, etc. But it didn't do anything because the companions never swap hands. There's no code for the companions swapping what's in their hands. So I obviously I thought that sort of wasn't really adequate. So I've made a couple of changes in the code, which mean that now there is a point to doing that. So that's what I want to show you in the rest of the video. So here we have the code, of course. Let's zoom in a little bit. There aren't any new variables involved in this. What we're going to look at is in companion default, which is a passage that we've already seen. It's the one where the companion acts and they're not subject to any orders that are, well, or at least not any orders that are relevant at the moment. And there's also a new passage called companion swaps hands, in which, well, it does what it says on the tin. So let's look in companion default. So there's two places that I've made a change, and in both cases I've made a note that says what happens. First of all, at the very start, if the companion's main hand is empty, there's a 50% chance that they will swap hands. That doesn't count as one of their actions, so it doesn't. If that happens, the code just continues. It doesn't go to next action because that doesn't count as their action. So if the companion's main hand is empty, there's a 50% chance that they will swap hands. And how do we know if their main hand is empty? Well, we look in $weapon, square bracket, $INI underscore WHO, end square bracket. INI underscore who, standing for who has initiative, is the number of, in this case, it will be the number of the companion. If we get to this page or this passage, it will definitely be a companion. And $weapon is the array that keeps track of what weapon is in the player character or the companion's main hand. So if the weapon in the companion's main hand is equal to 0, in other words, they have no weapon in their hand, they're using their fists, and random 0, 1 is equal to 1, then they will swap hands, which we do by going include companion swaps hands. And the reason that we have, instead of having the code right there, we have an include, is because there's two places where exactly the same code is used. And so therefore we put that code in its own passage and refer to it with an include rather than just copying the code. because that, well, there's a small advantage in that it makes the program smaller, although that's not, that important with the size that we're talking about here, although it could become important if it happens, 10 or 20 times, I suppose, and if it's a big bit of code. But really the main reason for it is so that if we swap the code, if we find that there's a mistake in it, or we want it to do something else, or we want to change slightly how the variables work or something, we only have to change it once. We don't have to change it each time that we do it. I'll talk about why 50% in a second. But let's go down to the other one first. And that is when the companion tries to attack but can't because they're out of ammunition, which is something that we've already coded. It's based on this, but I won't go through this because we've already coded it. I've added some new stuff to within that. If the weapon in companion's main hand is one-handed, swap hands. So how do we find out if the weapon in the companion's main hand is one-handed? Well, first we find the weapon that's in the companion's main hand. That is, as we've seen, weapon square bracket $I and I underscore who end square bracket. Then we look in WEA underscore OVR, the number of that weapon 3. WEA underscore OVR stands for weapon overview. And one of the things that's stored there is whether it is a one-handed or two-handed weapon. If it's a one-handed weapon, we swap hands. So in the fiction of the game, they raise their pistol, they go click, damn it, it's out of ammunition. Right, they put that in their other hand. If they have a knife or something, they put it in their main hand and they're ready to stab or whatever. Why? Now, of course, we'll go to this code here last. Companion swaps hands, although it is done in a way that we've seen before. But why 50%? Well, I wasn't sure about this, but so there's a couple of things. First of all, I don't think the companions would behave all that intelligently, because remember, we're not talking about sort of trained warriors. They're not sort of fantasy characters like a fighter in a D&D game or something like that, who's assumed to be sort of trained with and familiar with weapons. They are people from a modern city, and yeah, one of the personas is a scoundrel who might be a criminal and sort of maybe a little bit familiar with sort of certain types of violence. And another one of the personas is warrior, but I think they're mainly more meant to be an athlete actually than a warrior as such, although I don't really know. Even so, they're dealing with a situation that is completely outside of their experience. Like, even if you are a soldier, even if you have done some time in the army, being confronted by giant mosquitoes that are attacking you, I think would put you in a, you wouldn't be in a calm sort of place probably. So they should act a bit randomly, right? They shouldn't act sort of, they shouldn't act completely intelligently, I guess. And I guess I was a little bit worried about them having a pistol that didn't fire, so they swap hands, and then next time their hand is empty. So let's say we have a character that's like the starting characters where they have a pistol in their main hand, nothing in their other hand. And let's say they run out of ammunition. They go, oh, I'm out of ammunition, I will swap hands. But then in the next turn, they'll go, oh, I have an empty hand. And if this was 100%, they'd just swap back. So those two swaps would cancel each other out, and it would be as if there was nothing there. And if there was no code there, I might as well just have no code there, right? You want to have some sort of, change that's visible to the player. So therefore, a 50% chance of swapping hands. I don't know if that logic really pans out. I don't know if that'll work in play, or if what I'm saying, will make sense once the game's actually played. But that was my logic anyway, right? in playtesting it might turn out to be to not make sense. I actually think there's an argument that the companions should just swap hands sort of randomly. There should be a small chance that if they've got a pistol, they just put their pistol back and start using their fists for no real reason, because they're not sort of behaving optimally. But anyway, I mean, that's not, to some extent, that's not sort of my decision. That's really more the decision that the viewer whose game this is going to be should make. But anyway, the point is that there was no mechanical value in having the companion put anything in their other hand, and now there is. So let's say they have a machete and a pistol, and they're currently holding the pistol. You could order them to put the machete in their other hand, and that way, when they try and shoot and are out of ammunition, they will swap and they'll have a machete ready to go. And so that will make them a little bit more effective. And that is that. So that's the justification. Anyway, let's look at the code for the actual swap. Now, this is very similar to code we've seen before. In fact, there was code in PC inventory which I just copied and pasted, and in the PC inventory it refers to weapon 0 because it's talking specifically about the player character. And I changed all the references to 0 to INI_who. So it's just the same code with a different slot in the same arrays, basically. So it looks complicated, but it's just it's two examples of this more efficient code for swapping that we've seen already, where it's set square brackets, and then we have one variable, comma, another variable, end square bracket, equals, and then we have the two variables separated by a comma but in the different order. And that has the effect of swapping the two values. A becomes the old value of B, and B becomes the old value of A. And this happens twice. The first time, the two things that we're swapping are weapon_INI_who and offhand. Sorry, not _INI, weapon square bracket INI_who end square bracket, and then offhand square bracket INI_who end square bracket. So, as we've said, INI_who is who has initiative. It's the currently acting, in this case, companion. Weapon, as we've said, is the array that deals with which weapon is in the given character's main hand. And then offhand is similar, but it's for the other hand. So the weapon in your main hand goes into your offhand, the weapon in your offhand goes into your main hand. And we also have to swap the levels of ammunition if relevant. So if we swapped a pistol with 4 bullets into it from our main hand to our offhand, well, the fact that there's 4 bullets should also go from our main hand to our offhand, obviously. And for that, we use the two arrays ammo, $ammo, and $ammo_offhand. $ammo being the ammunition for the weapon in the main hand, and $ammo_offhand being the same but for the not main hand. So this is exactly the same as something that happens in the PC inventory when the player chooses to have the player character swap hands, except that in that version we don't use INI_who, we use 0 because it's always slot 0 because it's always dealing with the player character. Here it's dealing with whichever companion is currently acting. All right, so that's that. As I mentioned at the start of this video, I do want to find a solution for this graphics thing here, where this is more spread out than this. I don't like the way that looks, and I'd prefer to squish it up. As well as that, there are some special details of particular weapons that I need to deal with, like there's one that we can see here. The flame spray is not meant to be a single object. It's meant to be two different objects. I think it's like a cigarette lighter and a can of fly spray or something like that. So it's like a homemade flamethrower sort of thing. And if you have those two in the right hands, then that becomes a weapon that you can use. And there's also other weapons that have their attacks work in different ways, which I need to deal with. So that's what I'll be doing in the immediate future. But for now, I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.